Very good afternoon to all of you. We begin our talk on yoga as a therapy in psychiatric disorders. Talking on yoga, it is generally accepted as an ancient tradition which incorporates postures, breathing techniques, meditation, as well as moral and ethical principles. Reports on yoga in literature examining the subjective effects have consistently found benefits in quality of life, mood states, well-being. The initial encouragement actually came from observed improvement in certain symptoms like depression or anxiety in preclinical population seeking yoga. Recently, yoga has been tested in clinical population using well-accepted research design. So how do you define yoga? As per the ancient text, Patanjali, who has written a book on yoga, I mean, he's a sage and he was the first one to document the benefits of yoga. The first chapter mentions a verse which goes like Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which means yoga is restraining the mind from taking various forms. The Yoga Vasistha, which is a scripture on yoga again, says Mana Prasha Manopaya Yoga. I'm sorry, I don't have a Sanskrit background, so excuse me for any mispronunciation. This means that the process by which the mind is calmed is known as yoga. So, Sage Patanjali gave 8 limbs of yoga. What we commonly know is the asana and pranayama part of yoga, but there are actually 8 limbs. And these are not essentially steps in yoga, but these can grow parallelly in a given individual. So, Yama is the moral code of conduct. Niyama is self-purification and study of self. Asanas are the physical postures. Pranayama are the voluntary breath regulation techniques. Pratyahara is sense withdrawal. Dharana is concentration. Dhyana is meditation. Again, that is a popular, meditation has become very popular, particularly in the last few decades. And Samadhi or absorption in the self. This is the ultimate state which very few can actually reach.
If I can interrupt here, the point to note is that many people think of yoga as a purely physical kind of exercise. But if you read, especially Patanjali Yoga Sutra, there is almost no mention of physique. It's all about the mind. So the physical aspects are just seen as a prerequisite to having a healthy mind. So he starts off by talking only about the mind, how to control the mind and those things. So the Hatha Yoga, which has become popular in the West especially, is a purely physical form which doesn't have the other aspects at all. It has only the middle to the asana and the pranayama. And among the 5, just go back to that slide there. The 8-limbed or the Ashtanga Yoga which Sneha has talked about, can be divided into basically the first 5 are called as the Bahiranga Yoga, which is basically what can be seen from the outside. It can be seen physically that the person is following some rules or doing some asana, is abstaining from his sense organs. The last 3 are called as the Antaranga Yoga, which is what is done inside, which the outside person cannot pick up. So when a person is meditating, very difficult to say what the person is actually doing. It's for the person to experience. So that is the, although like Sneha said, it's not a stepwise, it's not like a ladder where only after one you climb the other. It can be in parallel. To come or be successful in the last 3, you need a base in the first 5. So that's how it is described by Patanjali. The idea is to reach a stage where the mind is in union with the universal consciousness. As Sneha will go on to describe, the word yoga comes from yuj, which means to unite. So the idea is to unite yourself with the universal consciousness. So the therapy part of it, of course, is a recent invention. But at that time, the idea was to develop yoga as to self-realization kind of thing. Sorry, Sneha, go on.
Thank you for elaborating on that, sir. So, in general well-being among a healthy population, there are many studies that have been done. Yoga has shown to reduce negative effect and increase positive effect. It has shown better stress management and improved wellness. Relaxation after yoga training is associated with a significant increase of cardiac vagal modulation and also a decrease in the sympathetic activity that parallels it. And increase in brain gamma-aminobutyric acid, particularly the thalamic GABA, which has also been correlated with the reduction in depression and anxiety among healthy individuals. This possibly could mediate the increased parasympathetic activity and reduce stress levels. Better cognitive and executive functions have been documented across studies. Now, there was this particular interesting study that was conducted at NIMHANS where during Om chanting, we did a functional MRI scan of the brain. So a person during chanting of Om and a control sound S, we scanned the brains and we saw that there was deactivation in the limbic structures, the anterior cingulum, hippocampi, insula, as you can see here. Whereas during the control chanting, there was no deactivation that was noticed. So which means that there could be better regulation of emotions following the chanting. The Om chanting is also associated with vagal nerve stimulation, particularly the part, which is also found when a person is chanting a particular pranayama called Brahmari, which is the bumblebee chant. So during that, there is the vagal nerve stimulation, which, as we know, has already been implicated as a treatment for depression. So in psychiatric disorders, the evidence stands for major depressive disorder and dysthymia, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders and OCD, functional pain disorders, substance abuse and dependence, psychiatric disorders of childhood and cognitive disorders of the elderly. I will elaborate on these in the following slides. So yoga and depression, there are many reviews existing on this one topic. Consistently, yoga has emerged as a potential antidepressant with impressive effect size of more than 1. Some studies which have used yoga alone as therapy have reported substantial antidepressant effects which are comparable to standard drug treatments or even better. So recently at NIMHANS, a comprehensive yoga module for depression was developed. It was validated with experts as well as on the based existing literature, and it was pilot tested in the patients, and it was found useful in terms of feasibility and efficacy. I would like to touch upon the study that was done way back in NIMHANS. This was one of the first studies where we compared yoga with 2 different arms. One arm received yoga alone. One arm received a standard drug therapy, which was imipramine, and the other arm was on ECT. So definitely improvement with ECT was more than the other 2 arms, but the improvement with Sudarshan Kriya Yoga as well as imipramine was comparable. So yoga can be compared to standard drug therapy. In outpatients with depression, the study that I earlier quoted, you can see that the yoga only group also has shown significant drop in the Hamilton Depression Ratings scale over a period of 3 months. You can see the drop is noted as early as 1 month. The neurophysiological effects in yoga of yoga and depression, there are consistent reports of drop of serum cortisol in patients practicing yoga, and this has been correlated with drop in the depression scores. There is also noted a normalization of BDNF levels, and this again correlated with the fall in depression scores. There are also studies, EEG studies, which have documented improvement in the P300 amplitude in drug-free depressed patients when given Sudarshan Kriya Yoga as the only treatment. So whatever I have told, you can see it in the form of graphs here. You can see the BDNF rise after yoga, and this was also related to the cognitive improvement. And more patients had a drop in cortisol with yoga. So the patients in the yoga only and the yoga with medicine group showed a more decrease in the cortisol than the patients who were given only medications. Also, the depression scores, the reduction in depression scores has been correlated with the fall in serum cortisol, as you can see here. Now, coming to schizophrenia, the most elusive disorder of psychiatry, literally it means splitting the mind. So schizophrenia is essentially a schism between thought and affect, between individual and society, between different parts of the brain. It is a connectopathy, so you can see both functional and structural abnormalities, and there are frontal and cerebellar abnormalities, right and left hemisphere connection abnormalities. Like sir has mentioned that yoga means yoking or union, which means to connect or to unite or to blend. So it is blending the individual's consciousness with the universal consciousness. So what is the rationale in giving yoga for schizophrenia? We all know that there are depressive and anxiety symptoms present in schizophrenia causing disability, and often these also turn to be difficult to treat along with coexisting psychotic symptoms. There are significant cognitive and executive function deficits, and yoga has been proven to be effective in all these areas. And there are several limitations of current treatments for schizophrenia, including the adverse effects. Research on yoga and schizophrenia, RCTs comparing yoga and waitlist or yoga and exercise have indicated significant advantage of yoga over either of these. There is consistent benefits in negative symptoms. Improved social cognition, facial emotion recognition deficits were shown to improve after undergoing yoga therapy. There has been improvement in the clinical global impression scales, improvement in overall cognition, both social and neurocognition. And also caregivers of patients with schizophrenia when given yoga therapy have shown perceived reduction in burden and improved quality of life after practicing yoga. This particular paper on yoga, the study was conducted at NIMHANS, and based on the study, the National Institute for for Health and Care Excellence in the UK has suggested yoga as a possible treatment for management of schizophrenia. Now, what are the mechanisms that could help yoga work in schizophrenia? One is a person learns from a teacher, so he's imitating. Postures are imitated. Performing them mindfulness is the essential of practicing yoga. So you have to be mindful of all the movements that you're taking. Attention to synchronizing breathing with the movements which leads to the postures. Also the focus, as Dr. Shivram always says, that it is not what you do to get into the posture or what you do to come out of the posture. It is what you do while remaining in the posture, how mindfully you are aware of your breathing, of your body position. That is what defines the right practice of yoga. So you have to focus on the experience with each posture, specific breathing practices. Also, there has been a documentation of the oxytocin hormone being elevated following yoga practice. A recent review published in the International Review of Psychiatry by Mehta et al. Has shown that meditation, that is dhyana, has focused attention, open monitoring, and autonomic self-transcending. And the practice of asanas, which includes imitation and being imitated. So both of these contribute to release of oxytocin, which is the cuddling hormone. And also there is strengthening of the mentalizing network and activation of the mirror neuron system. So this enhances social cognition, there is better social connectedness and reduced negative symptoms. So also, as we all know, metabolic syndrome is very commonly associated with the illness itself and also is a common side effect of the second generation antipsychotics. And yoga has been shown to have improvement in all of the parameters of the metabolic syndrome. Coming to anxiety disorders.
A caveat here, of course, is I'm sure all of you would have realized that unlike depression, in schizophrenia, it is always as an add-on treatment to antipsychotics. So there is no, it is not possible to give yoga as a sole treatment in psychosis for a variety of reasons. So this important distinction has to be kept in mind. In a patient with anxiety or depression, if moderate depression, we can consider yoga as a therapy by itself. Not so in schizophrenia. Antipsychotic is a must. This is an add-on. I just wanted to make that point.
So that's a very important point. Often patients come to us and say that if I do yoga, will I get rid of my medication? So it is very important to tell the patients that unlike in depression where yoga alone has shown improvements, for ethical reasons, there have been no trials in schizophrenia based on yoga alone, and there are also several reports of meditation particularly increasing the psychotic symptoms as it is considered to be a hyperdopaminergic state, hypothesized to be rather. So that is one word of caution there. Coming to anxiety disorders, not enough methodologically sound studies to definitely conclude that yoga is an effective treatment for anxiety disorder, but this was way back in 2005. Sudarshan Kriya Yoga has been documented across studies to be beneficial, low risk, cost effective treatment of stress, anxiety, PTSD and stress related medical illness. And also anxiety as a symptom of stress has consistently responded to yoga, and physiological consequences of anxiety have been contained by the practice of yoga. We have also spoken that how it improves the parasympathetic activity and the vagal tone. A 10-week integrative relaxation program for anxiety disorders has shown to significantly decrease trait anxiety, depression and worry. An RCT was done comparing mindfulness-based stress reduction to stress management reduction. This was done in over 90 patients with general anxiety disorder, and this showed significant reduction in HAM-A with both the techniques. However, MBSR was associated with greater reduction in CGI, Beck anxiety inventory, the Trier social stress test, which is a social stressor given in an artificial or lab environment, and greater increase in positive self-statements with a significant p-value. Currently, there is a big study going on in the US with more than 200 subjects comparing Kundalini Yoga to CBT and controlled condition commonly used as stress education. So we are looking forward to the results of this RCT. OCD, of course, now it has been separated in the DSM from the anxiety disorders. Nonetheless, there is anxiety associated with a lot of symptoms in OCD with patients we see clinically, and this is what they subjectively report improvement on. However, studies are very few and far in between. So, 2 small long-year trials were conducted to test the efficacy of Kundalini Yoga again for treatment of OCD, and they showed that the yoga group performed better on OCD ratings. Recently, at NIMHANS Integrated Center for Yoga, we have developed a module for the treatment of OCD. This had again been validated with experts as well as patients. So in the pilot testing, we have seen that there was improvement in the Y-box, CGI and self-reported well-being scores. The problem is that most patients with OCD coming to a tertiary care center for treatment would not come looking for yoga alone, as we are struggling to make generate evidence for yoga as a treatment. So patients would often be on medications, and majority of them will also be on CBT, and many of them are more likely to be inpatients. So that is one of the limitations of the study, and we are looking forward to more robust methods to study the efficacy of yoga in OCD. Coming to functional pain disorders, for decades, yoga has been used as therapy for low back pain, and there is strong evidence for both short and long-term reductions in pain. An open-label trial was conducted. One of our MD students did his thesis here in somatoform disorders, and he has documented improvement in outcome measures on pain, anxiety, sleep, and quality of life. There is also promising preliminary data for migraine and fibromyalgia. So now moving on to substance-related disorders, like Dr. Shivram mentioned, we don't have too much literature on this. I've tried to touch upon a few studies that were available. So comparable to conventional treatment, methadone treatment with traditional group psychotherapy, Hatha Yoga has shown to have good improvement on various psychological, sociological and biological measures. Another study which used Sudarshan Kriya Yoga and Pranayama in cancer patients who also had nicotine addiction, they showed that the patients, even after 6 months of practice, 21% of individuals were able to control their use of tobacco. A study in Amritsar, we all know the drug problems of Punjab. So here, treatment program for substance use which employed a comprehensive array of yoga, meditation, spiritual and mind-body techniques. There was improvement on multiple psychological self-report questionnaires. However, we need larger and more robust studies to adequately assess the efficacy and long-term effectiveness of yoga, particularly alcohol, which is the most commonly abused disorder after abused substance after nicotine, more so in India. So, in alcohol-dependent subjects, this was a study that was done in NIMHANS, so I decided to elaborate upon it. The participants were 16 patients with alcohol dependence, and these were randomized into yoga and control groups. So, these patients underwent detoxification, and following which, for 2 weeks, they were offered yoga or they were waitlisted. So, the yoga that was offered was Sudarshan Kriya Yoga. And for those who are not aware, this comes from the Sri Sri team. And the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga has differential breathing patterns. So there are 3 frequencies in which a person is expected to breathe, going from low frequency to high frequency. And the high frequency breathing has been shown to particularly help with depression. So after Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, we noted therapeutic benefits, and it did not increase any of the side effects. There was also reduction in the stress hormone levels, cortisol and ACTH. And this also corroborated with the Beck depression inventory scores in subjects. This is another study that I recently found, and I thought it would be nice to touch upon it for the methodological variations that are possible. So, chronic pain opioids have been used, abused, and even the physicians themselves often prescribe opiates, not really wanting the people to get addicted, but these people find it very difficult to let go of the medication and end up in de-addiction centers. So, they arranged group medical visits for subjects. 42 patients were recruited, and for at least 6 months, we matched them with the patients receiving conventional care or treatment as usual. So over 6 months, it was noted that none of these increased the dose of opiates, and 17 actually reduced their dose, and 7 were successful in stopping the opiates. And on a 10-point scale of pain intensity, the reductions in pain were statistically significant. You can see the p-value. And improvement in quality of life was also statistically significant. On the contrary, in conventional care, no patients reduced their opiate use, and 45% increased their dose over the 2 years of follow-up. So this was an interesting study that was recently published. However, we know there is increasing support for yoga and mindfulness as promising complementary therapies for treating as well as preventing addictive behaviors. But additional research needs to better understand and match the types of interventions to types of addiction, types of patients, and various settings. School-based yoga may have beneficial effects as a novel prevention program for substance use risk factors. There was a recent study done in the US where in high schoolers, they have given yoga for 6 months almost, and then they have followed them up over a year. And they showed that people who were practicing yoga, they had more control over drug-seeking behaviors, and they were able to control their need to use cigarettes or try cigarettes. An interesting possibility is that specific yoga practices have shown improvement on cognitive measures, particularly reducing impulsivity and inhibiting unnecessary responses. And these could possibly be explored in this population, given that impulsivity is very high among drug seekers or drug abusers or dependent subjects. Other psychiatric disorders, childhood disorders where yoga has been studied is ADHD. Cochrane review in 2010 found no significant benefits with meditation therapy. However, in a smaller study at NIMHANS in 2013, we have found significant reduction in symptoms of ADHD, and many of these subjects were not on any medication. There is also early evidence in improving imitation skills in autism spectrum disorders, particularly also, like we mentioned, that there is increase in oxytocin that could contribute to this. Cognitive disorders of the elderly. Yoga has multiple physical benefits in this patient population also, particularly postural hypertension is shown to improve. There is reduction in falls. However, my focus would be here to touch upon the cognitive issues in the elderly, which are associated with both normal aging and the degenerative disorders that are more common in this age group. So there has been improvement noted on attention, memory, executive function, processing speed, and general cognition. And the study that was done at NIMHANS showed an improvement in the cognitive measures, as well as in the physical and psychological domains in the quality of life scales, improvement in sleep. And over 6 months, there was the neuroplastic effects were noted, and you can see there is an increase in the hippocampus volume after practicing yoga. So this actually could be a potential for treating multiple disorders, particularly age-related cognitive decline or mild cognitive impairment. In early dementias, there is a possibility this could be used. People are now wanting to explore it in drug-resistant epilepsy where the temporal lobe is involved. So this could really open up new avenues for research. Now, integrating yoga and mental health services, as I've already mentioned, there are benefits in reduction of cortisol, increase in BDNF, GABA, oxytocin, heart rate variability. The vagal tone, which leads to improvement in heart rate variability. Amplitude of the cognitive event-related potential, I mentioned about P300. The gray matter volume. Also, there are changes in gene expression and the telomere length, which I have not really mentioned here. The challenges exist in terms of the assessments. Psychiatric symptoms themselves are very subjective in terms of their measurement. Double blinding is almost impossible because most subjects can differentiate yoga from any other form of activity which can be used as control. So the most appropriate placebo is an elusive dream. Add-on yoga versus only yoga therapy could be a possibility. One needs to really decide upon, or rather standardize, we need to have standard length of sessions, what could the possible side effects be with a particular module, the predictors of response, the number of days of practice one needs in order to see the effects. Suggestion effects could be generated by the faith in the guru or of the school. At times we see people who are Christian or from other cultural backgrounds, they feel that chanting, particularly of the word Om, could have a religious connotation, while that is not so. This could be split into individual components, like this is called as Nadanusandhana, where they chant A, U and Ma separately. The Ma part is the most important, as this has the most therapeutic benefits. Other than that, like I mentioned, the Brahmari Pranayama, where again you breathe against with your ears closed, and there is moon chanting, which again leads to vagal nerve stimulation. So these are you need to understand which component of it is more effective. We need to bring in more objectivity by use of biomarkers, both chemical, physiological, and imaging biomarkers. Objective parameters of yoga deserve attention, like I have mentioned earlier. Qualitative as well as quantitative research methods should be used parallelly in different studies. Rigorous RCTs are needed, not just open label trials or subjective reports. Studies across different cultural settings and uniformity in yoga procedures. So developing generic modules and guidelines and using them across populations to further validate their use. So again, why emphasize on yoga? It's a safe and effective traditional method. It is acceptable, particularly in the Eastern or our Indian cultural context, and it has multiple benefits ranging from physical, cognitive, emotional. And it's like setting yourself into an auto-regulation mode, like the improvement in parasympathetic activity, the increased GABA levels, the reduced cortisol levels, the improved BDNF levels. It's like you are auto-regulating your body by setting yourself into a lifestyle or a practice of yoga. So considering the multiple benefits of yoga, the UN has declared 21st June as the International Day of Yoga, and we recently celebrated the second International Day of Yoga. And with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.